Hello, and welcome to I Am Here in Practice. I am Santina, and this podcast is a companion to my book, You Are Here, a daily companion for living inside change. Each episode is a reflection inspired by one day from the book. We'll spend a few minutes exploring the day's idea together and what it can look like in real life. Today is day 5, and this is Rest Comes. When I think about how rest comes, I think about how a day ends. Because I think there's a difference between stopping and ending. I can stop working. I can turn off the computer. I can sit down on the couch. I can go to bed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the day feels over. Sometimes I'm physically done with the day, and I'm still carrying a conversation with it. I'm thinking about what I didn't finish, something I need to remember tomorrow, something someone said, or something I should have done differently. Or suddenly I remember something at 10 o'clock at night, and apparently it needs my immediate attention, even though it has been perfectly content to wait all day. The day has a way of following us around. We don't go from fully engaged in our lives to completely at rest because we changed rooms or looked at the clock. There's a transition in there. I think we tend to recognize transitions when there's something that marks them, like we leave the house to go to work, or we get in a car to go somewhere, we arrive home. There are things that tell us that part is over, now we're doing this. But the end of the day, it can be less clear, especially because so much of what fills our days doesn't have a clean finish. There's always another email or another thing that could be put away, or something we can't stop thinking about. And our phones, they have made this particularly interesting because technically the entire world is available to us from any place we land. Which seems like a questionable arrangement when you think about it. I mean, you can be under the covers and somehow still be at work, at the grocery store, reading the news, answering a message, looking at a house you have no intention of buying, and trying to find out whatever happened to this actor you haven't seen since about 1999. There's no natural end to any of it. We have to decide at some point, that's enough for today. And I don't necessarily mean we've finished everything. I don't know how often a day actually ends with everything finished. There's usually something left, something we're carrying into the next day. I used to keep a list of things I needed to do for each day of the week. Now I just keep one list. It's just a list of things I'd like to complete when I do. But that small change has made a difference for me. I'm not reaching the end of Tuesday with Wednesday waiting for me and 3 things left behind that belong to Tuesday. They're just things that aren't done yet. Maybe that's a part of why ending the day can be difficult. We can confuse done for the day with done. And, those are different things. Done means there's nothing left. Done for today means, there may be plenty left. But I'm not doing any of it tonight. I think I'm much better at accepting that with some things than others. There are tasks I can leave halfway through without thinking twice about them. And then there are things that seem to keep a little hook in me. I walk away, but part of my attention stays there. I'm still solving it or still replaying it. I'm still preparing for it. And maybe that's what interests me about the idea of giving the day an ending. It isn't only about what we stop doing. It's also about being able to release our attention from what we've been doing. And I definitely don't think we can command ourselves into that. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, stop thinking now. But we can begin by giving ourselves some signals that nothing else is required right now. The lights can get a little lower, the pace changes. Maybe the television gets turned off. We wash our face or make some tea, lock the door, put something away. there are ordinary things we already do that quietly say we're getting close to settling in. And I like that they're ordinary, because I don't want ending the day to become another thing I have to perform correctly. I don't want a 17-step routine that I can now fail at. Some nights are calm, some nights aren't. There are evenings when we're out late or trying to finish something. The dishes are still in the sink, and tomorrow morning is coming much faster than we would prefer. Real life gets to come to bed too. So I don't think it's about creating the perfect conditions for rest. I'm more interested in whether there's some small way we can acknowledge the transition. Even on a messy night. Something that says, I'm here now. The day is coming to a close. Maybe part of it is accepting that whatever is unfinished can be unfinished. Because unfinished things can feel like they're still asking something from us. And sometimes they are. There may be something we genuinely need to remember tomorrow. So write it down. Put it somewhere other than your head. I've had nights where I've kept thinking about something because some part of me apparently believes that if I stop thinking about it, it's going to disappear, like forever. As though my brain has been appointed some overnight security. It hasn't. And I think there's something kind about letting ourselves hand the day over. Not solving it, not tying everything up neatly. Just recognizing that we've reached the place where we're allowed to stop participating in it for a while. Yesterday we talked about getting familiar with our own rhythm. Recognizing the small signals that something has shifted. I think the end of the day, I think it belongs to that rhythm too. At some point, we're no longer in the middle of the day. We're arriving somewhere else. And perhaps rest begins before sleep does. Maybe it begins when we stop asking ourselves for more. When we let one thing be the last thing. This happened today. Some of it is finished. Some of it isn't. And today can still be over. I like that, because rest doesn't have to wait until everything is resolved. We can simply arrive at an ending. And maybe over time, the familiar little things we do at the end of the day help us to recognize it. The room gets quieter, our pace changes. Something in us begins to understand. Nothing more is being asked of me tonight. Okay. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. Thank you for spending a little time with me today. I hope you found something to take with you. Take what works, leave the rest.